Spiritual Activism, Recognizing the Shadow, Essay 3 of a series. Before I pick up where I left off in the second essay of this series, I would like to highlight a relevant teaching that I was reminded of while reading the book Matthew Fox, Essential Writings on Creation Spirituality by Charles Baruch. The teaching highlights the necessity of affirming the original blessing of human life as central to beginning the spiritual journey to wholeness. Now, this term, original blessing, is based on Thomas Aquinas's concept term of original goodness. But reading this work on Fox's writings reminded me of the initial encounter I had with his work and the term original blessing that I encountered in the 90s while reading his book Creation Spirituality on the urging of a friend who was then a student of his Oakland, California-based school, University of Creation Spirituality. At the time, while an exciting concept to me, it didn't really land on fertile soil. Thankfully, my 7-year deep study and practice of Buddhism from 2010 to 2017, particularly my study of mindfulness and the writings of Pema Chodron, provided the necessary compost to reawaken and revitalize the dormant mental seed planted many years ago and blossomed into a flower of liberation during a Buddhist retreat weekend during this period. For readers with traditional Christian backgrounds, awakening to this truth is especially important before starting this type of deep healing work, and I was remiss not to include that statement earlier. For more on the concept of original blessing, I encourage you to read one or many of the books authored by American priest and theologian Matthew Fox. However, if we return to Dante's Divine Comedy, the source of the inspiration for embarking on this adventure to write these essays on the topic of spiritual activism, we can see this necessity present in Dante's journey, this necessity of original goodness or original blessing. For example, initially Dante informs his guide Virgil that he's not strong enough for the first leg of the journey, the first leg into the Inferno or hell. However, after Virgil explains that he is there to assist him because Beatrice, Dante's first love, who died at a young age years beforehand, had asked Virgil to do so out of her care and concern for him. After hearing that, Dante musters the courage to follow Virgil through the gate of hell. This revelation of Beatrice's love and his lovability, i.e. his original goodness, fuels his courage to face his fears. As I stated in the second essay of this series on spiritual activism, internal seeing and recognition of habituated destructive life patterns, the inner capacities cultivated over time by regular self-observation along with daily meditation, are the beginnings of freedom from them. If and when one is serious about making deep personal change, these difficult and painful realizations source the motivation to attempt the challenging act of refraining from a habituated reaction. Notice the word attempt here. Refraining from habituated reactions take time and effort, a lot of effort and practice. One may not do so in a few attempts. One may fall short, a lot. However, over time, one develops the capacity to notice the habituated pattern arise in one's being sooner and sooner and sooner, such that one day we will be able to catch the thought train right as it starts to depart the station. At that point, we'll be able to refrain and replace or reorient to the desired ideal, mode, or way of being. Usually one uncovers past hurts, woundedness, or shadow elements underneath habituated patterns during this healing phase of the journey, which, as highlighted previously, is continuous throughout a lifetime and more spiral-like than linear. Again, this is not necessarily pleasant. In fact, it's not pleasant, but it is liberating. Stay with it, but expect an internal fight. This internal fight is to be expected as one's small self or ego or operational self is very challenged by this deep inner work. There is an aspect of the psyche that is threatened by this inner work of healing, maturing, and transforming to being and becoming a spiritual activist, or as Martin Luther King Jr. put it, a transformed non-conformist. Therefore, it is essential that you find support for your journey to include a comprehensive framework to inform, to guide, and provide insight into the complex internal process underway. Personally, I have benefited from several such frameworks, to include Integral Life Practice, that's the work of Ken Wilber and Terry Patton, Psychosynthesis, work by writers about the work of Roberto Assagioli, Assagioli, and the Fourth Way material, especially the writings of Ted and Rebecca Nottingham, as well as Contemplative Christianity, to include writers such as Thomas Keating, who I highly recommend, as well as Richard Rohr and Cynthia Bourgeault. And as I mentioned previously, Buddhism, especially the work of American Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, whose writings I also highly recommend for this phase of the journey, especially her book No Time to Lose, A Timely Guide to the Way of the Bodhisattva, or a section of this book presented in another book, Don't Bite the Hook. Of note, I briefly cover these frameworks mentioned above, as well as cautions for the spiritual journey in my book, 10 Developmental Themes of Mindful Leaders. The book version is available in Kindle, but it's also available free as a free PDF download on my website, and an audio version is available via Audible. I have also authored some essays on the topics of integral life practice, psychosynthesis, and the Fourth Way that you can check out on my website to get an introduction to some of this thought, these systems. In addition, you may want to journal and work with a therapist or a coach or support group during the initial phase of this work. Minimally, I encourage you to have at least one trusted support person you can authentically discuss your experiences with, who will objectively listen without offering a lot of unsolicited advice. To be continued. Happy travels.